organizer of the nuclear freeze movement, calling for a halt to the nuclear arms race. She was soon persuaded to enter politics. After 5 terms in the Massachusetts legislature, 83 to 93, Barbara focused on promoting peace by creating programs aimed at preventing interpersonal violence. Today, Barbara will share the most important things she learned doing community organizing and youth development work, ways to create conditions of mutual respect and cooperation within diverse groups and communities so that people all ages, beliefs, and backgrounds feel they belong and are appreciated. With her Mexican colleague, Olivier Ayon, Barbara has facilitated workshops for several lakeside schools and organizations. Currently, she serves on the board of the Lake Chapala Society and chairs their community committee. Barbara will lead her own meditation within the context of her talk. Welcome, Barbara Hildt.
Okay, turn on. Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
I can't tell you how happy I am to see all of you today. And isn't it great so many new people showed up on a day like today? I think that's a good omen, don't you? So, yes, before I talk about keys to creating peaceable community or caring community, I'd like to invite you to share a little quiet time with me so that we can find that inner peace, that tranquility, which we come here seeking in this beautiful place. So, if you just want to sit comfortably, uncross your arms and legs and take a nice deep breath, breathe in. Be glad you're not breathing in smoke and pollution, but the wonderful lakeside air. And if you feel like it, close your eyes. And just take some nice, long, slow, deep breaths. And on the out-breath, allow your entire being, your whole body to just relax. Now, be aware that we, each of us, have a place of inner peace, a place we can go to when the world is stressing us out. It can be just sitting like this or walking by the lake, but we know when we need that inner peace, and we have the ability to find it and create it. So let's be still for a minute and feel the peace. Thank you. Can you hear me? Does everyone hear me okay? Is Eva? Can you hear me? Great. Okay. So I'm really happy, honored to have this opportunity to share some things that have become very important to me in my life, particularly to share some of the valuable lessons I've learned while helping young people to create safe, peaceable communities. Peace-able, okay, as opposed to peaceful. People who are able, who know ways to make peace. So after I tell you a little bit about my work with secondary schools and youth organizations, I'll share things I've seen improve all kinds of human relations and help to create more harmonious, communities, and groups. Gandhi said, if we are to reach real peace in this world, we must begin with the children. And I would only add, and the youth. 6 years before the horrific 1999 massacre perpetrated by 2 students at Columbine High School in Columbine, Colorado, I was given the challenge of creating a violence prevention campaign with 50 high schools across the state of Massachusetts. I had first to convince many of the legislators that they didn't need to spend money on hiring school police and expensive surveillance cameras. That was not going to make their schools safer. I had to convince them that we needed to empower the students with sensibilities and skills so they could work together to create the conditions of a peaceable school community with a culture that promoted respect for all. We needed to recruit representatives from the various factions of the student body, students who excelled and students who struggled but had followers. Many have prejudices about students from other groups. To maintain their social safety, they only sat with kids they knew they had things in common with in the lunchroom. In most school cafeterias, there is social segregation enforced by students. So to foster the development of a school community in which everyone felt safe and respected with their differences, we needed to bring together students from different social groups who had influence with their own group of friends. We needed to give them experiences to discover the things they had in common with people they doubted they wanted to know, much less be friends with. First, we needed to ask each group of students to come up with their own agreement for how they would treat each other. Their list of acceptable behaviors became the group's norm, the norms of respect. And the safe conditions they created made it possible for everyone to participate in the activities and to take a risk to speak their truth to the group. My goal, our goal, was to teach the students peaceable relationship skills, how to listen and talk to each other respectfully, so that they could cooperatively collaborate to develop a campaign with strategies that would raise the awareness of other students so that they would want to support a campaign to prevent abusive behaviors such as bullying. As students who had been labeled losers or troublemakers by peers and adults told their stories and were listened to respectfully, they gained self-respect and better self-esteem and even positive leadership skills. Our Help Increase the Peace workshops, HIP we call them, were effective because the adults didn't come with the solutions. We expected the kids to uncover the answers by listening to each other as they talked about what they learned doing cooperative games and challenging activities together. We'd ask questions like, how was that experience for you? What did you learn? So when my husband Alan and I decided to retire here in 2009, I wasn't ready to give up my work with youth or to fold Youth Empowerment Services, my nonprofit. I never dreamed I would be able to do HIP workshops with Mexican youth because I am not fluent in Spanish. And then I had the good fortune to meet Livia Ion. a mature young woman from Hildt who is passionate and talented, passionate about developing peaceful young Mexicans. So I want Livia to stand up so you can see who she is. My dream girl. Livia and I have shared challenges and joys designing and delivering trainings for staff and youth of the International Institute and Love in Action, a shelter for children in Chapala. She's also given workshops for students in Hoco and at the Prepa in Chapala with great results. 2 years ago, with help from the LCS Student Aid Program, Livia earned her degree in human development with high honors from Cal State University. And very soon, Livia is off to the University of Sussex in the UK with a full scholarship to get her master's degree. So Livia! There isn't time today to describe the fun, rewarding experiences we had with local youth, so I'll just share one particularly beautiful experience Livia and I had with a group of teens right here at LCS in this gazebo. Try to picture a group of 16 or so Mexican teenagers and a few caring adults from Love in Action sitting in a circle with their group norms agreement visibly posted to remind them to respectfully listen to each other. Livia began to gently ask them how they felt during the trust-building activity that we had just done together. One at a time, individual youth spoke, expressing their true feelings, while the rest of the group listened with empathy, something they were learning, empathy. 2 girls with disabilities told the group how hard it was to trust kids, the other kids, because they had been teased and called names by some. There was complete silence. And then we heard a few kids say, "We're sorry. We didn't realize we hurt you." And when the workshop was over, I witnessed a boy and a girl privately apologize to the girls they had hurt with their thoughtless words, causing them to feel vulnerable and insecure. The next week, the director of Love in Action told me that after the HIP workshop, that youth seemed more caring and had more positive attitudes. The girls with disabilities were happier because the other girls were treating them with more respect and kindness. So, looking at my watch, I want to tell you about one very powerful activity we did at the end of every HIP workshop. So, I need a prop. So sitting in a circle, as we did up here in the gazebo, each person would have a turn to hold the ball of multicolored yarn, symbolizing, I didn't say wine, I said yarn, symbolizing our diversity with its many colors. And the instructions were that when you received the ball of yarn, we wanted you to share 3 things. First, one thing that you appreciated about the day that you were going to take away. That wasn't so hard for most kids. The next thing was a bit harder. We asked them to share one thing they liked about themselves, that they appreciated about themselves. That was harder. And then they were to wrap the yarn around their finger and look around the circle and see who had not yet received the ball of yarn, gently toss it to them, make eye contact, and tell that person something they noticed, something they appreciated about them, how they had helped them in an activity, how they've been friendly, how they've made them feel more comfortable, anything. The amazing thing was, with this activity, each time, we'd end up with this beautiful web symbolizing our connections. But the greatest thing is the space would be filled with this most positive energy. I mean, to me it felt like love. But it was positive energy from all the appreciations that were expressed. And these kids who said they didn't even like each other at the beginning would get up and hug each other. And in some of the peace camps I did, kids would reluctantly get on the bus and say, oh, why do we have to leave? Why can't school be like peace camp where everybody's nice to each other? And I thought, well, that's a goal. That's a goal. So, in reflecting on what I've learned helping kids to develop social competency skills, I've come up with 10 ways we can all help to create more caring communities and better relationships with all people. Our neighbors, our partners, our family members, our colleagues, strangers, and even our former adversaries. So, now I want to share with you some of the practices that I can pretty much guarantee can bring more peace and happiness to our lives and to the lives of others. We may not be able to change other people, but we can all change our thinking, our attitudes, and even our behaviors. So the first key is surprise. Be friendly. Be friendly. I'm from New England. How many people are here? Anybody here from New England? Oh, okay. Well, New Englanders aren't the most friendly people in the world. And I go back to the little town I raised my children in. I love it. But you know, you can walk down the street and walk by people, and chances are they won't look up or say hello. So if I have the habit that I developed in Mexico and say hello to everybody, they'll sometimes look at me like, what's wrong with her? You know? It's just not the common practice. But fortunately, we live in Mexico, where people are much warmer, you know? Yes, we've all noticed walking down the street, if you don't say something like, hola, buenos dias, buenas tardes, chances are, you know, the Mexican may just walk by, but maybe that's because they don't feel that we want to make contact, greet them. So, don't be shy. Say hello, hola, and smile. Smile at people you encounter. See what happens. Try making eye contact. So, I want to challenge, if you don't do this, I want to challenge you all to greet strangers you see on the street. And see if you don't get positive responses. Okay, the second key is be respectful of everyone. No matter what, no matter how they've treated you. When someone isn't being nice, the chances are they're not feeling good. They're having a bad day. And a few kind words may help them feel better. See? Okay, the third key is be patient. I told my husband soon after we came to Mexico, I think I know why I had to move here. To learn more patience. What a good place to learn it, right? Right? So don't be in a hurry all the time. And another thing I've learned can really bring safety and good feelings is to yield. Okay? In traffic, it'll make us a lot safer to just stop and let the other guy go first. But whenever we yield, we're saying something to that person. We respect you. We're giving you an opportunity. The fourth key is show interest in others. Inquire. ¿Cómo estás? How are you? How are things? You know, and say it like you mean it. You really want to know when you meet that person. Now, sometimes people will go on too long and you have to say, gee, I'm sorry, I have to go. But just to show you care, okay? And so many people down here live alone, right? So meeting a friend who says, how are you? That can really make a difference. Listen with an open mind and an open heart, you know? We all like to be listened to that way. And to listen with empathy. Try to empathize. I really thought that was one of the most important skills that we taught young people. Just imagine yourself standing in another person's shoes, you know? Imagine how that person felt. And when teachers would say to me, gee, we have so much we have to teach. We don't have time to teach kids peacemaking skills. I said, well, you can always teach them empathy. If you teach language arts and you teach social studies, you can ask kids, how do you think that character felt? How do you think those women who were oppressed felt? How do you think those Native Americans must have felt, those slaves? That builds empathy. Seventh, and this is my only don't, try to refrain from gossip. Gossiping does not help to build a trusting, caring community. And also, judging other people. It's very tempting sometimes to make judgments. But if we could catch ourselves and say, you know, I don't need to share what somebody shared with me. In the groups we have, in our trainings, we always have a norm of confidentiality. We agree that it is safer when people know that people aren't going to go out and tell what they've told, what they've shared, if people have agreed to keep things confidential within the group. And the eighth one is a big one. Forgive. Be willing to forgive. You know, in so many, I hear a lot people, I don't like that person, you know, I had a bad experience with them. I'm in the same group with them, but I don't really trust them, you know, because something happened years ago. Well, we can help repair that damaged relationship. You know, sometimes we have to be the ones to apologize, to say, yeah, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. Number 9 is show appreciation. Affirm the positive and the goodness in others, okay? We all like to be appreciated. Nobody likes to be taken for granted. And if we've been volunteering day after day, year after year, and people take that, our volunteer service for granted, it can sometimes get to feel like, do I want to keep doing this? You know, nobody seems to notice. So that's one reason why when I'm here on LCS campus, I make a point of giving appreciations to volunteers. It may be the only one they got since the last appreciation lunch, who knows? But we can all do more of appreciating each other and to affirm the goodness in other people. Everybody has the potential for goodness, no matter what they feel. And the very last of the 10 is commit acts of kindness. They don't have to be big things that you get written up in the newspaper for. Just acts of kindness, you know. We do it with our pets, right? We pat the pets, good dog, you know. So acts of kindness, that generates good feelings in the community. And people notice, and then they express appreciation. So it just keeps coming around and around. So I was gratified to find affirmations of these ideas and other ideas in the best-selling book by Daniel Goleman, Social Intelligence, a New Science for Human Relations. If you want to look up online and read more about what we've been learning, those of us who do work with groups, what we've been learning about social intelligence and how we can help to foster it, particularly in our young people. So, if you forget these keys, no biggie. It's okay. All we really need to remember is the golden rule, right? Treat each other the way we want to be treated. That's what it comes down to. That's what the kids realize. That's how we want to be treated. So, each of us can help to make our community, our organizations, and our relationships better if we're willing to change our thinking, our attitudes, and some of our behaviors. I really thank you all for coming and for listening. And on behalf of the LCS Board and the Community Committee, we want everyone, Mexicans and foreigners alike, to feel welcome on this campus. We appreciate all who have become members and volunteers, helping to provide so many valuable resources, activities, programs, services to this wonderful, caring community. Thank you.
But you're not done yet. We're only just beginning, right? Because
Time for questions.
it is time for
Or
questions.
comments.
And I may begin and wonder if you have any plans for implementing the ideas you talked about here, or in a broader sense, and each one does his part, that you'd like to talk. I mean, you're head of a committee, and you know committees, they have to do something.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Margaret, for that opening. Okay, so one of the things the community committee, the LCS community committee is going to do is in October, we're going to hold a series of focus groups. But they're for really the Mexican community, the parents like who bring their kids to the art program, students, and business and professional people, to get their input for how we can make LCS feel like home, a community that welcomes everybody and provides the kind of programs that we need to provide, besides the English as a second language and the children's art program and a few things like that. But in terms of the building of the community, I am totally open to helping in any way. I told Livia this morning, and I know she'll say a few words. I really can't wait until she comes back a year from now with her master's. And by the way, I only have a degree in art education. They made me an adjunct professor of sociology at UMass, but I never even studied sociology. Everything I learned was from kids. But I told Olivia that I would love to see LCS be a place where we have more workshops. And oh, speaking of Olivia, she's wearing this t-shirt. I have to show you her. She was a graphic designer, multi-talented. And she started an organization called Abrazo Paz, Hug Peace, and it says Jóvenes Transformando Comunidades, youth transforming communities. So we're both on the same page, and although my Spanish, isn't good enough to lead, I don't need to anymore, because she's a fabulous facilitator, and she's doing great work. So when you come back, Livier, I'm ready to help you, and I hope a lot of other people are ready to support your work. Thanks.
Good. So now we'll take some questions. Questions?
Thanks, Barb, for your talk. Appreciated it. The one thing I wanted to ask you about is when you talked about safe places, that type of thing. Recently, if you watch the news and you see university students talk about safe places, it really, when you look behind that statement, it means I don't want to be bothered hearing anything that's contradictory to my opinion. And I think that's what it's morphed into for some, that the safe place has become, well, you think something differently than I do, and I feel unsafe if you express that to me.
Wow.
Can you comment on that?
Thank you. I think that is totally possible, and that's what we found with students in high school too. The reason why the majority of students don't raise their hands and ask questions in high school classes, unlike elementary school, is because they've had an experience of being made fun of, just a little person laughing on the side, or adolescents, what their peers think about them is so important. And sometimes it's teachers who have humiliated them, embarrassing them. So yeah, so many of us, so many young people grow up thinking the way to stay safe is to keep your head down, don't speak, don't share your truth. But when they have the experience at something like a HIP workshop, and they're listened to and taken seriously, and then they start to share and they see, oh, well, I could think of it this way or do that. But speaking of the university campuses, I think that one of the main reasons why so many kids don't feel safe on university campuses now is because on most university campuses we have a partying culture, and too many young women particularly have been sexually abused, sexually assaulted. When I finish a HIP workshop with a group of males and females, it's very hard for me to imagine one of the young men being abusive to a young woman. I suppose it could happen, but it's like they suddenly see that female who's different from them in a different light. It's like a sister. Yeah.
I would like to congratulate you, because I cannot imagine, you mentioned you don't speak Spanish, and you have somebody helping you, but not to understand what they are saying really helps, with language helps, but really you are fantastic. It's something out of the world what you are doing. I experienced something yesterday. I walk on the street, I walk a lot, and I see table, the young men with children. They were doing art. Then I stop and I talk to them. I speak fluently Spanish. And they are doing on regular basis that. Then he told me they do athletics. Then I told, listen, I'm not an artist, but I'm an athlete, and I really would like to participate. And in the afternoons, they go to the mountains, to the lake, the sport playing. And those youngsters, different ages, you could see, I had accent in any language. They were just eyes open. They want to hear, they want to learn. It's something incredible. But I never heard about what you are doing. Maybe it was no time for me to enter that, but you can count on me. I speak fluently Spanish, and when she's absent, I will be good heaven. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I might add that Lydia and I did once. We did a workshop right here in the Gosh Pavilion with all adults, right? We did that with all adults from different groups. And the thing I failed to mention is how important all of our volunteer service is, and how appreciated. Even sometimes we don't feel the appreciation, but how appreciated. And that's what makes this community so great and rich, is the way people just go out and volunteer with all kinds of groups. Yes?
Hello. I don't know whether it was your goal in Massachusetts in those 50 schools to reduce overall violence. If it was, did you do evaluation and what kind of results did you get?
Yes, there were some, I didn't do evaluations myself, but there was some evaluation done, and in those schools, the incidents of bullying and fights and things like that in most of them it did go down. And I just talked about that one campaign. After that, I went on to work more intensely with high schools, usually that had had unfortunate incidents. And what we really found was the important thing, to make a school a peaceable school community, you had to start at the top. I had to train the teachers, get them to share their feelings, their thoughts about respect and disrespect, and start to change the culture. And then get their support, and then train a group of students who would work with the whole student body. So we did that, and then I worked with a lot of other nonprofit youth serving organizations mostly in the Merrimack Valley of Massachusetts, big cities, but yeah, we did. And actually, I worked in I directed a program that was federally funded, and we had to spend a big chunk of the $1 million grants to evaluate. And so we had a woman, a PhD, who evaluated everything we did. And I can't say that the youth that we were working with were the most tough. They weren't the kids in the juvenile justice system, although we did have some. We saw major shifts in the attitudes and behaviors of kids who were going to model and influence other kids in good ways.
So I want to add that all of what Barbara has mentioned is really important for me, the way I see all this work is each of us has something to add to the community to make it a great community. It isn't possible for me to stand here right now and with a blessing to have had a degree and the blessing to go to England with this scholarship without the help of Barbara and her husband Alan to finish my studies as well. And it's not only the LTS, it's their help, it's the help of every single person who has been in my path for me to get here. So for me, it's the ability to give this back to the youth, to have those opportunities, because I understand that in the way that I am able to reach more, I can open the doors for them as well. I am passionate to be able to bring that to my community, but also to create more awareness in each of those people, adults, children, everyone, every one of you here can do something to prevent violence. It's something that I would like to bring to the youth. Is the place where you're at, you can do something. Even if it's just staying there, even if it's just smiling to people, even if it's just giving a cent to this program, even if it's just, coming and do something on a day. I think that each one of us has a responsibility because we are part of this community. Now, in terms of a question around there for research, that's one of my main goals too. The program that I have just finished a couple of weeks ago was, the research part was funded by the university where I studied, Cal State University East Bay, and we have a long ways to finish that particular part because we did focus groups, journals, interviews, all kinds of different sources of information that will give us more learning to improve the curriculum. And what I'm going to learn even better is more ways to do better research so that I can apply more effective programs with everyone who joins into the ship for this. So I just want to emphasize that it's each of us who make this, and even if the Cal State is based supported or the psychology, peace psychology part of the American Psychological Association, who are also gave funds for the research part, is each of us, if we're not an organization, we're not this, we're not, okay, but still from where you're at, you can do something. So thank you for coming and listening and being willing to be open to this.
Next, okay. Hi, Barbara. First, I want to commend you too. It was very, I think it's the most important work that exists in the world. Needless to say, we live in a very, very violent world, and peace does begin with each of us. And some of the workshops you're describing for children, I feel very strongly that we could all use them. And I've done a lot of that kind of workshop stuff, and I noticed invariably, you know, I'd be in a workshop with like, you know, 100 people or 75 people, and you'd immediately start segregating yourself in your mind. You know, you'd pick out people in the room that you just knew you couldn't get along with, or you didn't like for some reason, or you judged. And those kind of questions, I mean, people want to make contact across the aisle. You know, we want to be loved. We want to connect with the people that we initially judge. And those kind of communications, the truth, changes everything and changes it instantaneously. And I would notice in each of those workshops, and I got used to it after a while, but each of those workshops, the very same people that I kind of just didn't care for, didn't like whatever it was about them, you'd end up loving them. And you know, we are all so close to that. And if we are going to save this civilization, it is dependent upon this kind of thing.
Right.
And I agree with you entirely that it is up to each of us in the tedious little ways up to the major changes that we want to make.
Right.
But smiling is a good way to start. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
It was wonderful.
Donna.
Barbara, thank you for a wonderful presentation. I was very moved by the work that you and Olivia have done, and I have in mind a possible group that could be helped by your work. But my question is, how large a group do you think could be effective in a workshop like this?
Oh, okay. Well, I've done workshops with as many as, well, first of all, let me say that to be successful, a group always needs to sit in a circle, so that everybody feels equal, everybody can see each other, hear each other. And so the largest circle I've ever created was about 50 kids in a high school, which then we broke down. But ideally, I think the best sized groups are between a dozen and 20 people for the kinds of activities that we do, right, Olivia? Yeah. And there are so many ways, as you've implied, that this type of workshop can be helpful to all kinds of different groups that are having difficulties getting along.
Barbara, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
In your workshops, do you deal with what makes people afraid of the outsider? Is that part of the program to have people reflect on their own fear of this person across the circle from me?
Oh, those things happen. You know, we as experienced trainers, we learn we get a feeling for the groups that we're working with, and sometimes we know ahead of time what some of their issues are. I would say that the best groups, in my experience, have been when I bring together people from, you know, like students who don't know each other and don't think they like each other, and that's when the most amazing things happen. But yeah, when you have these kind of listening circles and you do these activities that are a bit challenging, when you have to learn to trust somebody to do something physical, you know, and it brings up feelings, and then you sit down and you process it, and you find out what's happened in that person's past that has given them that fear of the other, the stranger. Okay?
I want to make a comment. I had a Chinese doctor, he was a professor, of sociology at the University of Georgia, but government asked him to do study why teenagers are so violent, why they are so angry. His study was, and he was going all over the country with those results, was lack of love. The way they grow up without a second parent, without parents, like especially colored people, the grandmother taking care, and they are so angry they are not receiving love. And we could talk and talk about it, but I want to suggest to everybody to watch the movie. It's in Spanish, but also I found it with subtitles. Perfume. Perfume is movie made about we cannot live without love. It's a story about a little child who was born in France very long time ago, and mother left him in dirt, in dirty water, because Paris was very, very dirty back then, and the history of his love. He was able to feel aromas, and he wanted to recreate even aroma of metal, but his goal was to recreate aroma of woman. But you have to watch what happened. Is something incredible.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank
It's
you.
a big lesson for everybody.
You reminded me, I just wanted to add one thing in terms of what causes so much youth violence and some of the horrific shootings, school shootings we've seen. If the cause had to be one word, I would say alienation. Kids who feel alienated, they have been alienated, and because they've been humiliated, so they're loners, they're alone, and then they go home and they play violent video games and they fantasize and they get their hands on a weapon. So that's where creating community and reaching out to those kids that are high risk for either being victims of perpetrators of violence, and as you say, make them feel cared about. Okay, is that it?
Well, I think that, Olivia, do you have another comment? Sure. Oh.
Just want to add to that part on the violence. Recently, I've been working on my last days with a group of all men, and they are about 20 to 30, it varies. It's a rehab center. And many of them have had terrific stories, and many of the activities, they show up that. Like, if I'm doing some activity about creativity, they talk about a gun, or they talk about some rape, or they talk about how they're being treated. And at the same time, I show them, and I show some of the youth, how much influence there is from the media that is unconscious and that comes into their minds. So how many hours they are watching TV a week with those announcements or the ads, or even if it's not ads, it's the movies, is the video games, as Barbara mentioned. A lot of that is coming from there, and that's definitely part of what we like to teach and emphasize, how much of that. They feel relieved. It's like, oh yes, I didn't know I grew up with all of this. Or I grew with all of these messages from my father, from my family, saying you have to do this, you have to wear this car, there's so much pressure. And all of a sudden they realize that there are other ways, that that's not the only way to be in the world, because it's not being themselves.
Thank you. No. The bell.
I just have one thing I'd like to share, and it was a scene from the movie Columbine, Michael Moore's film, and I remember that there was one scene where he was interviewing a parent, not a parent of anyone who was killed, but just a parent in that community, and the father worked at a defense plant, and in the background there was a huge rocket designed to deliver weapons. And Michael Moore said, well, can you understand any reason why your children would turn to violence? And the guy's like, No, but it's all there. It's a violent society. They learn it at home.
Well, thank you very much,
Peace.
Barbara, and all of you for coming and participating. We really appreciate your work in building this community. Come back next week, and in the meantime, stack your chairs and dispose correctly of your coffee cups and what else?